Hi, everybody. Welcome to GW Center for Integrative Medicine YouTube channel. I'm your host, Dr. Kogan, Medical Director, Associate Professor of Medicine here at GW University, Medical Faculty Associates. So kind of an urgent video today, given the news that I'm sure you all seen that the cannabis causes heart attacks and strokes. So I'm going to discuss the article. I'm going to say why the article is nothing new whatsoever. The data is completely misrepresented, pointing a totally upside down data. And probably the most important conclusion of the study is simple. Anything smokable can have harm, and we do not have any evidence that medical cannabis in form of sublingual gummies or capsules have any harm associated with cardiovascular disease. So let's, as usual, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and share my second screen, and we're going to dive right in. So the title of the article is Association of Cannabis Use with Cardiovascular Outcomes Among U.S. Adults. It's a very large population-based cross-sectional study. So what does that mean? Well, it means that between 2016 right here in 2020, they took data of surveillance from 27 American states and 2 territories, and they analyzed nearly 500,000 respondents who were asked a variety of questions. And then their conclusion is that there was a non-statistically significant increase in coronary heart disease. This didn't cross 1, so this is not statistically significant. But there was statistical significant increase in heart attacks at 25% and 42% increased risk in stroke. So, it's a significant finding all in all. And if the patients, or if the people who were doing it daily, that risk was significantly higher. Again, smokable products, it has nothing to do necessarily with THC. I do find it quite disturbing at some of the conclusions, because the conclusions here basically saying something along the lines of it's a cannabis that does this, it's the THC that does this. It's an actual, in my opinion, a completely misguided attempt at misrepresenting this study. It is incorrect to say that THC does anything to cardiovascular disease, because you really don't know what kind of ingredients from the smokable cannabis have been responsible for this outcome. I do want to point out a couple of really important details. So we're going to look at this table. It's quite important. So this is how the distribution of socio-demographic factors occurred in this study. So they did give us breakdown for patients who were, for example, younger, whether they were men or women, et cetera. So there's a lot of data. I actually do think that the overall assessment was very important. And it's important to know that smoking cannabis, primarily recreationally, can be associated with side effects. So I think that's really important. So the actual data in terms of outcomes is summarized on this page, and you have a couple of different graphs. So this is, if you look at so the A, this one is the cardiovascular heart disease, or coronary artery disease. B is the heart attack. C, which is this one, is a stroke, and this is a composite. Composite means all outcomes combined together. So you can definitely see that with time, as somebody continuously smoking more cannabis, the risk goes up. Again, probably nothing surprising. And it comes up pretty quickly. So you don't have to wait for many, many months before you start seeing an actual statistically significant increase. So, come a month, at the end of that month, there's about 25% increase here. So, very important point. The last point that I'm going to make here before I'm kind of going to just talk a little bit about what I think all in all this means, is that I'm looking for methods, and that's very important. And that is, first of all, very few people used it. I find it quite interesting. So they assessed 434,000 people, adults, and only 4% used cannabis daily, and non-daily use was 7%. I think that doesn't fit what we think is going on. We think that a lot more people using cannabis. So I think a lot of people didn't want to share information in the study. I think they were hiding the data. Cannabis still has potentially negative impact if somehow your employer, for example, finds out that you're using cannabis. There could be some repercussions. So it's possible that we don't actually know exact percent use here or true percent use, and we only know what's been reported. Again, this is not a controlled study. This is simply a survey. You can have this kind of biases, what we call, that are totally changing the outcome. But nonetheless, this is what's really important. What's really important is that, as you can see, the most common, this is critical, form of consumption was smoking. And what's really essential, they did not discuss what other 27% patients were doing, and they didn't include any of that in the data. So if you carefully look at sort of, well, how is this breaks down, we have no idea. We basically don't know if the patients were using medical grade. We don't know if those who used oral forms, sublingual, rectal, topical, they didn't assess them at all. They didn't ask them any questions. They didn't bother to ascertain that the different route of administration of cannabis is going to have different side effects. I find that it's highly problematic. I think it's borderline criminal in a way, because this is how the whole field is. Like, you go to dispensary, and for every smokable product, you have non-smokable. And so just to say we're only going to analyze smokable products, and then we're going to say, oh, but that means that all cannabis is bad, no matter how you take it. It's a basically scientific lie. So the article is highly problematic from that perspective. The only true conclusion of the article that I would say, that the smoking of cannabis carries risks, and it carries risks upwards of somewhere between 20 to 50% increased risk in cardiovascular disease. Again, it speaks to one simple reality and one simple fact, that we do have to regulate cannabis industry. We have to make sure that cannabis, for medical reasons, is well regulated for the whole country, not in a patchwork of misguided rules and laws for each state, but as a federal process, that everybody have a clarity how it works. Everybody understands what forms are safer than others, that there is a more uniform products, that the control of quality is uniform and better understood. For example, one real big problem, we have no idea where people were getting this product. It's very possible that many were contaminated with things like mold, or that they had some pesticides on them. Because again, we don't know whether these products were medical grade, whether they were obtained on the black market, where they were grown at home. All of those different routes of obtaining the products are going to have a potential issues with them, right? So the medical grade, when it's grown in the medical environment under guidance of particular legal oversight, and at least in Maryland, where I can speak very clearly about the quality control, no pesticides are used. There's zero chance of mold growing in the facilities, because again, they're constantly surveyed for the humidity. They constantly surveyed for every single possible bug or toxin that can appear in there. So they're highly regulated. Everything's grown hydroponically, and the process is highly standardized and highly regulated by the state. So state sends often unannounced surveyors to make sure that the quality is followed. So I think the study overall is important. Again, it adds to the point that don't smoke anything. Smoking anything is bad for you, whether it's a tobacco, cannabis, or I don't know what, and probably going to have harm. If you do choose to take inhaled route, because for whatever reason you prefer that, my strong recommendation is that you do a dry flower vaping, because it's a much lower temperature, especially if you can get an equipment that's a bit more higher quality, and it can control the temperature of the vaporizing, that you can vaporize at the cooler temperature. Chances are, again, based on this study, we have no idea whether what I'm saying is true or not. If if the vaping is going to be safer than the smoking, but I would presume that it will be. So yeah, bad study, but it adds to the value, all in all, of what we already knew. Like we already knew that smoking is bad for you no matter what you're smoking. But it's good to have additional data to discuss it with the patients. And what I take from it as a clinician practicing and seeing a lot of patients and recommending cannabis is that I'm going to push harder to say, don't smoke, please. Please obtain your cannabis in non-inhaled forms, whether you sublingual, topical, rectal, oral. All these ways are appropriate and definitely a lot safer, because again, you're not going to get any possible toxins coming into the lungs. One important aspect here is, of course, we're talking about very complex combustion outcome products. We're not talking about cannabinoids only. We're talking about all kinds of things that when you light anything and inhale, gonna end up in the lungs. I do hope that in the future we will understand general toxicity of a smoke a lot better. I think that would be a critical data, and then from the environmental perspective, to understand not just, okay, any smoking can cause heart attack and asthma, but what exactly in that smoke that does it. There are some hints of that data appearing. It appears very clearly that inhaling any smoke or any tar or any kind of products of combustions carries a variety of different risks, not just cardiac cancers. All organs can be negatively impacted. For example, there's even increased risk in kidney disease if you're continuously exposed to different smokes, because your kidney is going to continuously excrete toxins from there. So that's the data. If your cardiologist tells you you gotta stop taking your cannabis and you're taking sublingual and it's a medical prescription, please tell your cardiologist that they're wrong, that they don't understand the data in these settings, that the cannabis was not assessed for medical or non-smokable, that do promise to your cardiologist, I hope you would, that you will stop smoking anything, because I actually strongly agree that would be the right thing to do for anybody with any kind of risk of heart disease of any kind, that you will not smoke anything under any circumstances going forward. I hope this was helpful. Subscribe if you like this. We will be, as usual, covering all kinds of news, all kinds of articles, discussing a variety of topics regarding integrative medicine. I decided that I will try to, each time I do a video, I will talk about what I'm going to talk about next. So next time I will cover Tai Chi again. There's yet another study that I wanted to present to everybody. Stay safe, don't smoke. See you soon. Goodbye.